I've been watching some videos of people who are putting these linear actuators on their trolling motors to use as a trim adjustment. Or they call it a trim adjustment, but actually they're using it for to adjust their depth for shallow water. And I bought this linear actuator about 3 years ago, and I wanted to try to put it on there differently, where instead of rocking the motor back and forth for height adjustment, it would lift it straight up and down. And a few years ago I made a bracket up for it and tried it, and it worked, but I can operate this trolling motor. I can steer it with a remote control that I made. And I wanted to be able to use this lift and also be able to steer it while it's in the up position. And I just wasn't able to steer it good enough with the bracket that I made up, so I kind of took it apart and left the idea alone for a while. And recently I've been having problems with my shoulders, so it kind of bothers me to have to reach out and back and lift the motor up and put it down to the height I want it manually. So I decided it was time to come up with something, and I came up with this idea. Well, I say I came up with it. I'm not sure if anybody else has done the same thing, but this is what I came up with. I put the linear actuator, actually I mounted it right to the swivel bracket on this Minn Kota mounting bracket. By the way, this is a Haaswing brushless motor, and the mounting bracket it came with, I wasn't too crazy about it, so I swapped it over and put my Minn Kota bracket on it. It's a lot heavier duty, and it suits me better. But anyway, I mounted that right to the right inside the bracket here to the swivel part, and it doesn't interfere. I could still rock this back and forth the way it normally is. Any of the mods I made with this trolling motor, I made it so that it can be used with my modifications or the way it was intended to use. In case something happens, actuator breaks down or something, I could still use it by hand, or my remote steering stops working, I could still steer it by hand so I'm not stuck. But anyway, I have this wired up to this button controller. It's wired, and like I say, I can steer with this as well. All I have to do is flip a couple of switches on my steering mechanism, and I can steer this with the wireless remote, or a wired remote, as well as a wireless too, because I do have a wireless remote for this, which is this right here. And it's a matter of flipping yet another switch, switching over from wired to wireless. And I can steer it with this as well. But like I say, the problem with this lift was the way I had it the first time I hooked it up. It was an entirely different bracket system I had on here. It would lift up fine, but it wouldn't steer. It was putting too much of a strain on the steering motor. So I just did away with it and used it with just the steering motor, and every time I had to lift it up and down, I did it by hand. But now, like I say, it's getting a little tougher to do, so I came up with this, and I'll show you how it works. This linear actuator is a 12-inch linear actuator, which is actually more than I need for lift, I could have got away with a 10-inch, definitely, and maybe even an 8-inch. Just to lift me up 8 inches would have got me up high enough to go in any shallow water I wanted to go in. But anyway, I can use this with the wireless remote. And it's not real fast, but then again, nothing on this raft is real fast. But it's fast enough. You can see it's going up pretty good. I'm already up there. Probably a good 10 inches now, which is way more than enough that I need to go up. And also I'll show you how that I can still steer it while it's in that position. I just got to flip the switch. And I realized that, like, for people who have kayaks, this setup in particular wouldn't be really good for them because they're not able to turn around and reach the trolling motor. All my buttons and switches and everything are right on the trolling motor itself, and I sit right near the trolling motor, so I can reach it just by turning around and reaching it. So that works for me. If I was to put it on a kayak, of course I'd have to have everything wired to a console, which wouldn't be a real big deal, but this is specific for, I put this on a 5-man raft, so it's specific for that. I got it set up for that. So with the wireless remote, I can still steer it while it's up in the air. It steers great. I mean, this is a real accurate steering system I got on here. And I could speed this steering up or slow it down. I got a motor speed controller in it. So I could speed it up for fast current or wind if I have to maneuver it fast. Or I could slow it right down for nice calm water. And it tracks really good. It's pretty precise. Where I put it, it stays. Oh, and then, like I say, I could use it with that button box too. I just have to switch it over to button box and it'll work like that. And this actuator will go to a certain height and shut off, as well as when it comes down it shuts off when it's all the way retracted. Oh. I can use this to bring it down. And I think there are a couple of trolling motors that have this capability. Like one is and see, it'll stop by itself. And then when it stops by itself, it comes out of the bracket that I have there, and I'm able to steer it by hand the way it's intended to. But like I say, there's a couple of companies that I think that have like an actuator type lift, and I think Minn Kota has one, and I know that Hoswing Comax 55 has a actuator in it that lifts it up and down too. But anyway, that's my my lifting mechanism. And like I say, I see a lot where the people use them to rock theirs up and down for height adjustment. And to me, when you have it rocked up, you're putting a lot of your thrust down in a downward position. It isn't pushing straight, so you're wasting a lot. It isn't as efficient as pushing you straight. And also with this, I can lift it up when I come into shore and leave it right in that position, take my trolling motor right off, and then when I go back out, when I put it on, it's in the position I want, and all I have to do is put it down once I get into deep water. So, yeah, this is working out pretty good. I may shorten this up a little bit. I was going to buy a 10-inch one, but I figured I could just probably Well, I know I could, no problem about it. I could cut this down a couple inches. The cap comes right off. Just cut the rod down in the casing and move the limit switch for the uppermost limit switch. Just move it down so it'll stop on its own when it gets fully extended. But anyway, yeah, that's it. Works good. Thanks.